Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com, and this is hopefully going to be my last, I wasn't even planning on this one, last tariff video. However, I believe it is a learning experience. Because I caught on to something when the tariffs from Switzerland, the extra 21% was taken off the table for 90 days, and I caught on to something I don't think anyone else did. However, I don't really follow much in the watch news to see if anyone else is talking about this. But there is a loophole, I will call it, that the Swiss use when exporting Swiss watches, and how that incorporates China into the mix, I want to go over with you. Before I do, I did do an entire video on what Swiss made means. I do recommend you check that video out. I'll put a link to it somewhere up here, because you might say things like, oh, Mark, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this. I didn't. I know all that. I've already said it on the channel. However, this one's important. Let's go to the paper. Okay, so the Federation of Swiss Watches, the FHS, you can look them up online. It's like fhs.ch or something. Very clearly defines what a Swiss watch is. And the video I just talked about a minute ago, I broke down that whole document. I went through it. And more or less, you have to have 60% of your value derived from your watch to carry the Swiss-made label. That's one component. And you might say, oh, okay, so maybe there's be 40% Chinese components. That is true, there can be. However, when you import it, that doesn't really come into play as much, because right when you start reading the document, Article 1, the first actual statement, defining what a watch is. A watch is, well, a time measuring device intended to be worn on the wrist. I'm with you, I like it. Main function is to measure time, and the movement, the inside, it gives you the size constraints, so that's how we define a watch. And then we have some notes, and then note 3 is very interesting. Tell me if this is not like lawyer speak. The component that enables the watch to be worn is not included in the definition of the term watch, specified in paragraph 1, and it gives you the amendment of when it came in. This came into effect like 8 years ago. I do not know what it said 9 years ago, and it doesn't really matter, because when you calculate the 60% value of a Swiss watch, the strap is not included. So the strap can be made anywhere in the world that you desire. So I went through my history and found an old watch worksheet, very similar to the ones I've shown in prior videos, and I will break it down. So this is the way things were. Now, I showed you in prior videos that on a certain watch imported under, I want to say, tariff code 9102.21.70 or something, these are the rates that you can expect to pay. So I've said this in the past. Again, if you're just catching on for the first time, check out some of the tariff videos. I break all this down. When you import a watch, you break it up into the case, the movement, and the how it's held onto your wrist. If there's a battery, you have to give a value of the battery, but we're talking about self-winding watches, so this kind of is null and void. So the case. So in this case, the case is manufactured in Switzerland, and the vendor manufacturer marks it 100 Swiss francs. And I have shown you in the past that sometimes one of the tariff codes that I'm talking about values that at a 4.2% tariff. So we have always paid I had dollar signs here, that was my mistake, it's Swiss francs. So 4.2 Swiss francs, which is actually a little more than $4.20, but let's not worry about that. Let's just call a franc equal to $1 for now. The movement, Swiss origin, of course, this was a Swiss watch that I had imported, valued at 200 Swiss francs. The movements are typically not as a percentage, they're just a fixed value, not much, a couple of bucks, so $1.53. And now, the strap does not come into play. We can make it in China, and the watch is still Swiss made, because this calculation does not come into it. You can do the math and know that this is not 60% of those two numbers added together. However, we're not talking about the 60% thing. We are just talking about the strap. Strap is made out of stainless steel. It's 82.5 francs. Strap was tariffed previously, before all this madness, at 9.8%. $8.10. So we wound up with a total tariff on this is again my cost, this is wholesale, 383 Swiss francs. We wound up with 13.8 Swiss francs as a tariff, which is roughly 4%. So not bad, it's not horrible. However, with the latest legislation of now, it changes day to day, right? But today's Friday, April, what is it? I think it's the 11th. Yeah, look, I'm wearing an Islander, and I'm wearing a brew. You know, people got upset last time I didn't do a wrist check. So with the latest madness of 125%, so you would take your baseline tariff, which was 13.83, you would take the value of the bracelet at 82.5 and multiply it by 1.25. Hey guys, it's time for a visit from Editing Mark. I don't know what I was thinking, 125%. I was wrong. It's actually 145% as I am filming this. But you can do the math. That 82.50 will turn into roughly, what, 120 something extra dollars. So I don't think the point is lost on you, but let's just keep following the math and just know that it is actually more of an impact than I wrote on the paper. You get 103.13. That's 125% of the bracelet value. That makes your new total tariff on this watch 117 francs, which has just boosted the tariff from 4% up to 31%. It added basically a full over $100 to the import cost of the watch. Now you might say to me, well, Mark, when it comes in though, they'll just declare it as Swiss. Nah, they really can't. Country of origin of each component is specifically defined when you fill out the customs paperwork. Now, I'm not saying that every Swiss watch company makes their bracelets in China. I'm pretty darn sure that Rolex doesn't, Patek doesn't, probably Omega doesn't. I don't know, actually. But I am sure that some of your lower cost Swiss watches, like, I hate to say names, but I'm sure like Hamilton, Tissot, I'm sure they're making their bracelets in China. I mean, there's just no reason not to. And I look at the price of the watches, and they probably are. And this is still going to be a real, very big concern for these companies. You can absorb, I guess they can absorb 100 francs extra if they have to, but I feel like this is something that nobody's really keying in on at this point. And I kind of saw it like, you know what, this is my chance to educate. Because again, based on Swiss law, 60% of the value must be Swiss for it to be considered to be a Swiss watch. However, when you break out the value for US customs, you do have to tell what the strap is made out of, even though it doesn't come into 60% calculation. These are import calculations, and that number definitely causes your tariff price to skyrocket well above and beyond what you might have intended. Yeah, they can play with these numbers, maybe raise these, lower these, etc. But you didn't hear that from me. But anyway, this has been Mark from longonwatch.com showing you how the Chinese tariffs still come into play when we're talking about importing Swiss watches. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. We had watch-related content a couple of days ago, so don't worry, watch-related content is on the way. Put your comments, thoughts, anything else you want to say down below. I probably won't be addressing them as soon as I can. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.